They smashed my front gate at 3:17 a.m. Not a single knock, no call. Just the roaring sound of a lifted truck crashing through my custom cedar and iron ranch gate like it was cardboard. I bolted upright in bed, heart pounding, dogs barking like mad. Then came the lights, blinding, flickering, like someone brought a rave to my front yard. I ran to the window, still trying to convince myself this was a nightmare. But what I saw, people, 4 of them, wearing yellow safety vests with the letters CHO Enforcement duct taped across the front. One held a clipboard like she was about to start an inspection. Another had a crowbar. A crowbar. They stomped onto my land, breaking through the garden gate, past my old wooden swing I built for my niece and straight toward the barn. By the time I got outside in my boots and boxers, they were already inside my barn. My barn, where I kept my tools, my gear, and the old restored 1965 Mustang I'd been working on for 4 years. They didn't even look guilty. Just looked at me like I was trespassing. That's when I called the cops. Not just because I was mad, because I was shaking. Because this was more than a neighborly dispute. This was criminal. And guess what? That little 20-minute raid of theirs? That reckless invasion of privacy? It ended up costing the HOA $680,000 in fines and damages. But it didn't start that way. No. It started with a letter. Just a small white envelope stuck in my mailbox. 3 months before the barn incident, I was living a pretty peaceful life out in the edge of Red River County, Texas. My name's Jack Mitchell. I'm a 38-year-old rancher, ex-military, and all-around fixer-upper guy. I live on 12 acres of land my granddad left me. Quiet place, deer in the morning, cicadas at night. It's the kind of life you earn with calloused hands and a bit of grit. The only wrinkle in my piece was the new development going up a mile down the road, Red River Trails. They were building these shiny little houses with gray vinyl siding, fake shutters, and American flags pre-installed on every porch. Looked like a postcard suburb dropped in the middle of the wild. They had their own HOA, which, to be fair, shouldn't have mattered to me. But things got weird real fast. First came the letter. It was from the Red River Trails Homeowners Association, addressed to Jack Mitchell, property owner, parcel Darkshire 22807. It started nice enough. Dear neighbor, as a resident near our community, we'd like to cordially invite you to maintain certain shared aesthetic standards to ensure the value and peace of our neighborhood. It got worse. They listed violations on my property: unapproved fencing, unpermitted livestock, visible rust on a vehicle. They meant my Mustang parked under a tarp, non-standard mailbox. I laughed, literally laughed out loud. Because I didn't live in their community. My ranch had been there for 3 generations. I didn't share a road with them. I didn't use their trash service. I wasn't under their HOA. I wasn't even in the same zip code. So I ignored the letter. 2 weeks later, I got another one. This time with a $200 non-compliance fee stapled to it. No joke. That's when I drove over to their little HOA office, just a trailer near the model homes, decorated with fake flowers and a flagpole. I asked to speak to whoever was in charge. That's how I met Deborah Lancaster, president of the Red River Trails HOA. Late 50s, wore a pantsuit in the Texas heat like she was running for governor, and had the kind of smile that made you check your wallet. I explained the situation, nice and calm. Ma'am, I appreciate your concern, but I don't fall under your HOA jurisdiction. She didn't blink. Oh, but you do, she said, tapping her red nails on her clipboard. The new development plan includes a shared boundary clause. Anything within a 1-mile proximity qualifies as a contributing property to the neighborhood's overall aesthetic. It's in the supplemental CCRs. I had no idea what CCRs were, still don't fully. Something about covenants, conditions, restrictions, legal garbage. I told her again, flat out, I don't belong to your neighborhood. I never signed anything. You don't have authority on my land. She gave me that tight, rehearsed smile. Well, we'll see about that. And from that moment on, it started. First, it was the drone. Yeah, a drone. buzzing over my property every other day, snapping pictures. I caught it on camera and brought the footage to the sheriff's office. They shrugged. Then came the notices on my fence post. 5 of them in 2 weeks. I didn't know what the HOA was trying to prove. Maybe they thought I'd just roll over and pay the fines. But I wasn't built like that. The thing is, I wasn't even mad at first. I figured it was just a bunch of bored people with too much time. People who'd never had to dig post holes or fix a carburetor or chase down a loose steer. They didn't understand ranch life. They were used to trimmed hedges and Amazon deliveries. So I tried kindness. I invited a few of the Red River Trails folks to a community cookout I hosted at my place. Smoked ribs, corn on the cob, cold sweet tea. Even let some of the kids feed the goats. Folks seemed to have a good time. For a while, things quieted down. Until the sign. I'd put up a wooden sign near my gate that read, "Private Ranch. No HOA jurisdiction. Enter at own risk." It was handmade, nothing fancy. I thought it was funny. Apparently, Deborah didn't. 3 days after I put that sign up, I got a notice of defamation against the HOA. They claimed I was misrepresenting the nature of the community relationship and intimidating potential buyers. Buyers? Of what? My land wasn't for sale. Never had been. I sent them a cease and desist letter. Spoke to a lawyer buddy of mine from the Army who helped me draw it up. Thought that would be the end of it. But no. They escalated. They filed a civil claim. Sued me for non-compliance. For real. My lawyer laughed so hard I thought he'd choke on his gum. We filed a motion to dismiss. The judge didn't even let it go past the first hearing. Tossed it like a week-old taco. But someone at the HOA didn't like that. Because not long after, I started noticing tire tracks on the edge of my property. Then someone cut one of my barbed wire fences, let 2 of my goats out. I found them down near the creek, shivering. That's when I put up trail cams. Real good ones. Camouflaged. Night vision. Caught someone in a reflective vest walking along the edge of my pasture at midnight with a flashlight. Sent the footage to the sheriff. He said, "Looks like someone from the HOA's getting real curious." I tried to stay calm. Planted sunflowers by the fence. Fixed the gate. Talked to neighbors about setting up a watch. I didn't want to fight. I just wanted to be left alone. But then, 3 weeks later, at 3:17 a.m., the gate came down, and the barn invasion began. They had no idea the cameras were rolling. Hidden in the rafters, the corners of the roof, even the bumper of the Mustang. No idea. And one of them did something incredibly stupid. Something that would come back to bite them in the worst way possible. But that's where everything changed. That night. That moment. And you won't believe what happened next. By the time the deputies pulled into my driveway, the 4 HOA enforcers were still inside my barn. One of them, big guy, maybe mid-40s with a shaved head and a neon vest that barely fit, was standing over my Mustang's hood, pointing and talking like he owned the place. The woman with the clipboard had her phone out taking pictures of every tool, every scrap of wood, every greasy rag like she was on a home renovation show. The other 2 were snooping around my workbench and hayloft, even peeking inside the old feed barrels. I'm not sure what they thought they'd find: buried treasure, illegal chickens. The deputies came in hot, lights flashing, sirens wailing, tires spitting gravel. It was beautiful. Finally, some backup. I waved my hands as they pulled up. "They're in the barn," I yelled. The officers, one was Deputy Willis, a tall, no-nonsense guy with a strong Texas drawl, and the other was new, marched straight to the barn. "Hands where we can see 'em. Step outside now." The clipboard lady tried to explain something about property inspection rights, but she didn't even get through the sentence before Deputy Willis cut her off. "This ain't your property, ma'am, and you just committed felony trespass." The 4 of them were cuffed, read their rights, and escorted to the back of the cruisers. Still, as they were being led away, the bald guy shouted at me, "This isn't over. You'll regret messing with the HOA." Yeah, real intimidating while stuffed into the back seat of a police cruiser. But here's the thing. I didn't feel relief yet. I felt shaken. My barn was violated. That car I'd poured sweat and years into, touched by people who had no right even to be on my land. I walked back inside with my dogs trailing behind me, ears still perked up. I didn't sleep that night. And when the sun came up the next morning, I realized that what had just happened wasn't going to be the end. It was going to be the beginning of a much bigger war. Later that week, I drove out to my lawyer's office. Dean Connolly, Vietnam vet, old school guy with a wooden desk that had probably seen more law cases than most courthouses. I brought him the footage, multiple camera angles, crystal clear. One angle showed the exact moment the bald guy kicked my toolbox, denting the side. Another caught clipboard lady pulling a crowbar from her bag. Dean watched the footage in silence, sipping his coffee. When it was done, he leaned back and said, "Jack, they just handed you a golden goose." "How bad do you think this can get for them?" I asked. He rubbed his chin. "We're not just talking about trespassing. That's small beans. What you've got here is a clear case of criminal mischief, attempted property damage, maybe even conspiracy to commit burglary if we argue it right." He leaned forward. "But more importantly, this wasn't just some random break-in. This was organized. They had vests, a clipboard, tools, a plan." I nodded slowly. "You're saying we go after the HOA itself?" "Oh yeah," he said. "We go big. Civil suit for damages, violation of private property rights, harassment, emotional distress. And considering your barn and car are worth a good bit, we could be looking at hundreds of thousands in penalties." I left his office feeling torn. I'm not a lawsuit kind of guy. Never liked dragging people through court. But this wasn't just people being nosy or annoying. This was malicious. Still, part of me wanted to understand why. Why go to such lengths over a ranch they didn't even control? That answer came sooner than I expected. About a week later, I got a visit from an old neighbor, Susan Miller. Sweet lady, early 60s, used to live 3 lots over before she sold her land and moved into one of the Red River Trail's homes. She came bearing banana bread of all things. I invited her in. "Jack, I'm so sorry," she said as she sat down. "I heard what happened. I couldn't sleep after I saw the flashing lights. I think you need to know something." "What is it?" I asked. She hesitated, then leaned in. "They've been planning this for a while." My chest tightened. "Who?" "Deborah, the whole HOA board. I overheard a meeting at the community center a month ago. They were talking about your land, about making it absorbable. Said if they could document enough violations, they might convince the county to declare your property a nuisance." My jaw clenched. "And then what?" "They were hoping to get your land zoned into the HOA, force you into compliance, or make you sell." I was stunned. "They think if they control your land, they can build a second entrance to the development," she added. "Some kind of expansion. You're in the way." I stood up and paced the room. "Why didn't you say anything before?" "I didn't know it would get this far. I thought it was just talk. But after that night, after they broke into your barn, I couldn't stay quiet." She handed me a slip of paper. Names, meeting dates, and a line that chilled me. "Pursue forced compliance if neighbor remains resistant." That was the moment it all clicked. This wasn't about aesthetics, or fences, or my Mustang. It was about control. And these people, they were willing to break the law to get it. I thanked Susan, genuinely, because she could have stayed quiet like the rest. But she didn't. And that's the part of the story I don't want to forget. The kindness. In the middle of all this madness, someone chose empathy. But her visit stirred up more questions than it answered. If they were planning to absorb my land, how far were they willing to go? I started to dig. I requested public records from the county clerk, development plans, zoning applications, HOA filings. Took me a few days, but I found it. A proposal submitted just 2 months earlier. Red River Trails Expansion Phase 2. Right across my property line. Their little neighborhood wasn't just trying to grow. It was trying to swallow me. But here's the kicker. The document listed my land as pending compliance. Like they assumed I'd already given in. They didn't know yet that they'd made a huge mistake. That mistake? That camera in the rafters I mentioned earlier? Yeah. It didn't just record the break-in, it recorded the moment clipboard lady whispered something to the bald guy while pointing at a stack of crates. I had to enhance the audio. Took it to a friend who works with surveillance tech. When we cleaned it up, this is what we heard. If we move that old junk, we can claim he's storing hazardous material. That'll force a shutdown. They were trying to fake a violation. And that was the nail in the coffin. Because now we had proof. Not just of trespassing, not just of harassment, but of intent to commit fraud. And that meant this wasn't just a civil case anymore. It was going criminal. But just as I was getting ready to file the new evidence, something happened that stopped me in my tracks. That evening, as I was walking the dogs along the fence line, I saw a black SUV parked just down the road. Engine running, no plates. It didn't move when I approached. Didn't move when I took a picture. Then slowly, it backed away, disappeared down the hill. And an hour later, I got a letter on my doorstep. No stamp, no return address. Just 5 words typed in bold. Drop it. This isn't yours. And right then, I realized this fight was about to get even darker. I held that letter in my hands for a good 5 minutes without moving. The paper was smooth, freshly printed, almost too clean, like someone wanted to make sure there were no fingerprints. It wasn't folded, meaning someone walked up to my porch and placed it there by hand. Drop it, this isn't yours. 5 words. But those 5 words felt like a 1,000-pound weight dropped straight onto my chest. I wasn't scared. Okay, maybe a little. But mostly I was furious. My land was mine. My granddad built this place with his bare hands. I'd fought for this soil, bled for it, lost sleep over it. And now some HOA suit with a clipboard and bad intentions was trying to bully me off my own property? No. Not happening. I called Dean, my lawyer, the next morning. They threatened you? He said, his voice tight with concern. Didn't sign it, didn't send it through mail, just dropped it off. Could have been last night while I was walking the dogs. He sighed. All right, now it's personal, we're going federal. Federal? I blinked. Aren't we a little ways off from that? Not when they start threatening property owners in connection with a land dispute. That's intimidation. Cross-state statutes could apply if the development company funding the HOA has out-of-state backers. You got security footage? I checked. My front camera caught the SUV's shape, but not the plate. Just a blurry silhouette and some headlights. Still, Dean said it was enough to move forward. I handed over the audio, the footage, the photos, everything. It was time to fight back. But things weren't as straightforward as they seemed. 2 days after I spoke to Dean, I got a visit from County Code Enforcement. Not a coincidence. The officer, a young guy named Alex, looked uncomfortable from the moment he stepped out of the county vehicle. Mr. Mitchell, he said, avoiding eye contact. We've received a few anonymous tips about possible code violations on your property. Let me guess, I said. The HOA. He shifted. The complaints weren't signed, but I do have to follow up. I walked him around the property myself, showed him everything, the Mustang, the chicken coop, the compost pile, even the back pasture where I'd recently stacked some reclaimed wood I planned to turn into a new fence. None of this is against county code, Alex mumbled after checking his notes. I leaned in. Then why are you here? He hesitated. I'll tell you off the record. I nodded. Go ahead. They've been making noise at the county offices, he said, calling in complaints every day, sending pictures, video snippets, letters. Someone's trying really hard to paint you as a public nuisance. I frowned. You mean editing footage? He nodded. They sent in a photo of your car with what looked like leaking fluid under it, but when I inspected it, nothing. Dry as a bone. I almost laughed. So they're faking stuff now. He shrugged. Just saying. Watch your back. These people aren't playing fair. That confirmed it. This wasn't just over my land anymore, this was about setting a precedent. The HOA wasn't just coming after me, they were testing how far they could go, how much power they could grab without getting slapped. And I wasn't about to be their guinea pig. The next few days were oddly quiet. Too quiet. No new letters, no visits, no drones. But I wasn't stupid. It was the kind of silence that comes before a storm. I kept working on the ranch, trying to distract myself. Repaired a water line, repainted the garden shed. Even took a morning to help an elderly neighbor, Mr. Harlan, round up a lost calf from his pasture. He thanked me by handing over a jar of his wife's pickled okra and whispering, "Keep your chin up, Jack, you're doing right." That hit me. Hard. Because as insane as things were getting, the truth was, people cared. I wasn't alone. Neighbors were starting to talk. Word was getting around that the HOA was pushing boundaries, crossing lines, trying to bully a rancher off his land. That mattered. But just as I began to feel some small sense of peace, the fire happened. It started at the far end of my property, right near the old mesquite grove. I was feeding the animals when I smelled it, sharp, acrid smoke. At first I thought someone was burning trash. But the sky turned orange fast, and the wind carried the heat straight toward the barn. I dropped everything and ran. The flames were eating through dry brush, licking up fence posts. I grabbed the hose, turned it on, started spraying the ground, trying to carve out a wet line to slow it down. My dogs were barking like crazy, herding themselves into the yard. I could hear the crackle, the pop of wood bursting, and my heart stopped when I saw the embers dancing toward the barn roof. That's when the neighbors came. One truck, then another, then 4 more. Buckets, hoses, rakes, shovels. No questions asked, just people jumping into action. Susan, Mr. Harlan, even young Tyler from down the road who barely talked to anyone. They came in swinging, stomping out flames, pulling debris, soaking brush. We fought the fire for nearly an hour. By the grace of God and the strength of a good community, we stopped it before it reached the barn. I stood there, soaked in sweat, covered in ash, breathing like I'd just run a marathon, and that's when someone found it. "Jack," Susan yelled, holding something out in her gloved hands, "you need to see this." She handed me a small metal canister, burnt on one side, half melted. It was a flare, a road flare. Taped to it was a scrap of paper, scorched around the edges but still readable. It said, "Next time we won't miss." I stared at the flare in silence, the ground under my boots still hot, my lungs full of smoke. This was no accident. This was arson. And now it wasn't just a land dispute, it was war. And I knew, from that moment forward, someone was going to pay. Because they crossed a line, and they thought they were untouchable. But they didn't know me. Not yet. And they had no idea the kind of storm they'd just woken up. The fire marshal confirmed it the next morning. "Accelerant was used," he said, kneeling near the burn line. "Probably gasoline. And that flare, someone lit this on purpose." He didn't even try to sugarcoat it. This wasn't a wildfire, it was a message. I stood there, arms crossed, jaw tight. "What happens now?" I asked. "Well," he said, standing up and brushing ash off his pants, "we'll report it to the sheriff's office. But off the record, if this came from who you think it did, you need to protect yourself, Jack." He handed me a copy of his report. I tucked it under my arm and stared at the scorched patch of land that used to be part of my mesquite grove. A dozen trees gone. One section of fence, melted. Half a chicken coop, charred black. Could have been the whole ranch. Could have been me. I wasn't sleeping much anymore. Couldn't. I'd lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, waiting for the next sound. Tires on gravel, glass breaking, dogs barking. Every creak of the house felt louder, every shadow felt heavier. But fear wasn't what kept me up. It was the rage. They'd tried to burn me out. These people, these so-called community leaders, didn't just want me gone. They wanted me erased. my history, my home, all of it. And I realized I couldn't just react anymore. I had to take the fight to them. The very next day, I filed a full criminal complaint with the sheriff's department. Arson, attempted destruction of property, harassment, trespassing, conspiracy. And I gave them everything. The barn camera footage, the flare, the threatening note, the letter from before, the statement from Susan, the zoning documents, the audio recording, every shred of evidence we'd been collecting. Sheriff Landers, a gruff, heavy-set man who'd been in the job since before I was born, sat quietly as he flipped through the files. "This is a mess," he muttered. "Yep," I said. "You're gonna have enemies, Jack. People with money, developers, real estate lawyers. Let 'em come." He nodded slowly. "We'll open the investigation. But you know how this goes. Lawyers stall, judges lean, HOA boards spin stories. This won't be a clean win." "I don't need clean," I said. "I need justice." He looked me in the eyes then. Something changed in his face. "You'll get it," he said. I left the station that day knowing one thing. I was all in. Over the next week, the pressure started building. I became a local story first. Small write-up in the Red River Sentinel. Local rancher targeted in land dispute with HOA. Nothing too flashy, but enough to spark whispers at the diner. Then a local blogger picked it up. When HOAs go too far, the story of Jack Mitchell. That one got some real traction. Comments poured in. Some folks shared their own horror stories. Others called me crazy. A few even accused me of starting the fire myself for attention. But the more people learned, the louder the support got. Neighbors began showing up with casseroles, firewood, offers to help rebuild the chicken coop. One guy, a welder named Benji, helped me reforge the melted section of the gate for free. Even kids from the nearby high school came to repaint the barn. My land had become more than just a ranch. It became a symbol, a line in the sand, and people were stepping over it to stand on my side. But while the support grew, so did the opposition. I got a letter from a lawyer representing the Red River Trails HOA. A nasty one. Accused me of creating a hostile public narrative and instigating unlawful vigilante behavior against a legally recognized community board. They demanded I remove all public accusations. They gave me 48 hours to comply. I gave them nothing. Dean, my lawyer, sent back one sentence. Counter demand, prepare for formal discovery. The gloves were off. And then came the biggest blow yet. I was sitting on the porch one evening, sipping cold coffee and scratching behind my dog Copper's ears, when I saw a black town car coming up the drive. Not an SUV, not a county truck. This was sleek, polished, tinted windows. Out stepped a man in a navy suit, expensive shoes, and a smirk, like he already knew the ending of the book. "Mr. Mitchell?" he asked. "Who's asking?" He reached into his pocket and handed me a business card. Thick cardstock, gold lettering. Daniel Pierce, Vice President, Land Acquisition Development, Greenlock Properties, Inc. I stared at it. "Never heard of you." "We're the parent company of the Red River Trails Development," he said smoothly. "We fund the HOA, manage expansion, and, well, we prefer to keep things clean." "Funny," I said. "You people aren't real good at clean." He smiled like a snake. "Jack, I'm here to offer you an out." I crossed my arms. He continued. "We'll buy your land, all 12 acres, more than market. You walk away with enough to start a new life wherever you want. No more threats, no more complaints, just a peace. And if I say no?" The smile faded. "Well, then we keep doing things the hard way. More complaints, more inspections, more lawyers. You know how this works." I walked down the steps, right up to him. "Let me make something real clear, Mr. Pierce. This land ain't for sale. Not now, not ever. I don't care how many zeros you tack on. You came onto my porch looking to buy my family's blood and sweat with hush money. That tells me you're scared." He didn't blink. I kept going. "You thought I'd be the easy target. One rancher. But you made a mistake. You didn't just mess with a man, you messed with a community, and we're just getting warmed up." He slid the card back into his coat. "You'll regret this," he said. "Doubt it," I said. He got back in the car, the tires kicking dust as he drove away. That night, I installed 2 more security cameras, reinforced the barn doors, slept with a loaded shotgun next to the bed, because something told me they weren't finished. And I was right, because the next morning, I woke up to find something even worse than fire. Every single one of my animals, goats, chickens, even the barn cats, were gone. Gates open, fences snipped, no sign of struggle, no blood, no prints, just an empty ranch, and a spray-painted message on the barn wall. "This land isn't yours." I stood there, fists clenched, heart racing. This was no longer about land. This was personal, and they had just made their biggest mistake yet. The moment I saw that message, "This land isn't yours," spray-painted across my barn in dripping red letters, something inside me snapped. It wasn't fear. It wasn't even anger. It was resolve. Because this wasn't some teenage prank. This was calculated. This was a message. And if they thought stealing my animals and vandalizing my barn would make me back down, they didn't know me at all. They just proved I was right to fight. I called the sheriff again, same as before. But this time, I wasn't just reporting a crime. I was pressing charges for animal theft, trespassing, property destruction, and targeted harassment. Sheriff Landers showed up in person, this time with 2 deputies and a state investigator. They documented the scene, took photos, lifted prints from the gate latches, even found part of a glove snagged on the barbed wire. "Looks like whoever did this left in a hurry," Landers said, examining the torn fabric. "Yeah," I muttered. "They always run when the truth's chasing them." We tracked prints through the dew-soaked field behind my barn. Tire treads, deep ones, looked like a dual-axle trailer. We followed the trail all the way to the East Road, the only back exit off my property, and you'll never guess where it led. Straight to a construction staging area for Red River Trails Phase 2. I kid you not. Their development team had a small gravel lot with building supplies, dumpsters, and a temporary office trailer just off the tree line. And sitting right there, a livestock trailer with my ranch's initials JM, scratched out but still visible under a coat of black spray paint. Sheriff Landers radioed for a warrant immediately, but something didn't sit right. My animals were gone, and they weren't in the trailer. Just hay and feed buckets inside. No animals, no sounds, nothing. "Wherever they took 'em," I said, "they didn't keep 'em here." Deputy Willis nodded. Maybe this was just a handoff point. A handoff, like a smuggling operation. My stomach turned. "You think they sold them?" I asked. "We'll find out," Landers said, and something in his voice told me he meant it. Meanwhile, Dean, my lawyer, was sharpening his claws. "This is a full-blown RICO case now," he said over the phone. "If we can prove coordination between the HOA board, their parent company, and the vandals, that's organized criminal activity. We're talking federal racketeering charges." "That real?" I asked. "That big?" "Oh yeah," he said. "If even one HOA board member knew about the fire, the threats, or the theft and said nothing, they're complicit. If that company guy Pierce helped fund it, he's liable. We're talking asset seizure, prison time, everything." I didn't even care about the money anymore. I wanted the truth. I wanted the names. And I wanted my animals back. 3 days passed, then a week. The town buzzed with rumors. Some folks said they saw a group of goats near an old abandoned dairy plant out on Route 77. Others claimed they heard chickens in crates near the edge of the highway rest stop. A trucker swore he saw a black SUV and a trailer loaded with goats headed east at dawn. I chased down every lead. Nothing. It was like my animals vanished. And that cut deeper than I ever expected. See, ranch animals aren't just livestock. Not when you've raised them from birth. Not when you've bottle-fed the runts, tended their injuries, built pens by hand. They're family. I sat on the porch one night, staring out across the fields, and for the first time since this whole thing began, I felt tired, not defeated, just worn down. Like all the weight of the land, the lawsuits, the fight, it had finally crawled up my back and settled on my shoulders. Then I got a call. It was Susan. "Jack," she whispered, "you need to come to the community clubhouse. Now." I threw on a coat, grabbed the keys, and drove like the devil was chasing me. The Red River Trails clubhouse was usually spotless. White siding, blue shutters, fake potted plants out front. HOA meetings happened there every Tuesday. But this time, it was different. Susan met me outside. She was shaking. "I wasn't supposed to be here," she said. "They had a private meeting, forgot to lock the side door. I overheard everything." "Everything what?" I asked. She handed me a small USB stick. "They had a presentation," she said, voice cracking. "A full slide deck. Plans to expand. Plans to pressure outhold ranchers. Not just you. There's 2 others in the county they're targeting. They call it the buffer zone strategy. Force old properties to comply or leave. Then convert the land for new development access." I stared at her. "Did they say anything about the fire?" "Not directly, but there were notes in the slides. One said, 'Engagement methods must remain deniable.' Another said, 'Property X has not responded to compliance incentives.'" "That's you, Jack." I couldn't breathe for a second. "What about the animals?" She hesitated. "They mentioned a storage facility on the other side of the county, rented under a fake name. I don't know if—" I was already halfway to my truck. I didn't even wait for backup. The place was a run-down storage yard with rusted gates and flickering lights. I pulled up just past midnight. No guard, just rows of storage units, quiet as the grave. I walked down the line with my flashlight. Unit 108. The lock was new, but the dust was disturbed. Someone had been here. I cracked the bolt with a crowbar, and when the door rolled up, there they were. All of them. Every goat, every chicken, even the old orange barn cat, curled up on a bale of hay like he'd never left. I fell to my knees. I didn't cry, but I came close. They were hungry, dirty, but alive. I called the sheriff. "Bring a team," I said. "I found them, and I've got the address." Within 24 hours, it was all over the local news. Ranchers' stolen animals found in HOA-linked storage facility. The sheriff held a press conference. Dean filed emergency motions. And the HOA? Well, they went dead silent. But it was too late. Because now the state was involved, and the feds weren't far behind. And as the investigations began, digging into documents, finances, emails, and board meeting minutes, I knew something was coming, something big, because someone had authorized this whole scheme, and I was about to find out who. They called it Operation Land Grab. The state investigation into the Red River Trails HOA and their parent company Greenlock Properties, Inc. was officially underway. What started with one midnight barn raid and a few phony HOA letters had snowballed into one of the biggest property rights investigations in Texas history, and I was right in the middle of it. It all moved fast after the animals were found. Sheriff Landers turned over everything to the state attorney general's office. Dean and I submitted over 300 pages of documents, photos, video, sworn statements, the works. And then, search warrants were issued. They raided the Red River Trails HOA office, pulled hard drives, meeting minutes, financial records, even took the fake clipboard used in my barn during the break-in. They raided Greenlock Properties regional office too, hauled out boxes of files and computers. People were escorted out in suits and handcuffs. You could hear the sirens from my porch. But the real kicker was what they found in the emails. Dean called me at 8:03 a.m. "You sitting down?" he said. "Just tell me." "They've got internal emails, Jack. Dozens. Between Deborah Lancaster and Greenlock's VP, Pierce. Subject lines like force compliance strategy, Mitchell acquisition status, and, you ready for this? Fire risk contingency." My stomach dropped. They actually planned the fire? Doesn't say it outright. But there's a message from Pierce that says, if the nuisance doesn't fold, heat things up, metaphorically or otherwise. The day before your barn caught flame. I gripped the phone so hard I thought it might snap. They're done, Jack, Dean said, his voice almost giddy. This is going to bury them. But while the legal gears turned, I had something else to do. I stood in front of my barn that afternoon, tools in hand, and began repainting the wall, covering up the red spray paint. Every brushstroke felt like reclaiming something. Neighbors came by to help. Susan brought lemonade and a radio. Tyler brought paint. Mr. Harlan patched the fence while his grandson refilled the chicken feeders. It wasn't just about fixing what was broken, it was about healing. The local paper sent a photographer. Can we take a picture of you with the animals? The guy asked. Only if you get their good side, I said, pointing to the goats. People started calling me the last rancher. I didn't hate it. But the truth is, I wasn't the last anything. Because what this fight taught me, what this whole damn war proved, is that good people show up. They might take time. They might come from places you never expected, but when it counts, they come. 1 week later, the number finally came in. Dean walked into my kitchen, held up a single sheet of paper and said, "You ready for the cherry on top?" I raised an eyebrow. He slid the paper across the table. Total court-awarded damages, $680,000. I blinked. 680? He grinned. Yep. Between the property damage, emotional distress, livestock loss, legal fees, and punitive fines for illegal enforcement actions, that's what they owe you. The HOA, Greenlock, and the individuals involved. Personally, I was stunned. How much of that will I actually get? Well, assuming they don't go bankrupt trying to dodge it, most of it. State froze their accounts. They're already selling off lots to cover the debt. He leaned back, sipped his coffee. I gotta say, Jack, this case is gonna be in textbooks one day. But I didn't smile. Not really. Because money wasn't what I wanted. Not at first. And even now, standing there with a number bigger than anything I'd seen on a check, I didn't feel victorious. I felt vindicated. That was enough. Almost. There was still one thing left. One truth that hadn't surfaced yet. One name. Deborah Lancaster, HOA president and self-declared enforcer, had vanished. She didn't show up to the hearings, didn't return subpoenas. No one had seen her since the raids. Even Pierce, her shady partner, swore he hadn't heard from her. But someone had. Because one night, as I walked the edge of my land with Copper trotting ahead, I found a letter nailed to my fence. The handwriting was familiar, and the words chilled me to the bone. You got your win, Jack, but this land will never belong to you. You're just borrowing it until the world forgets. And I don't forget. DL. I pulled the note down slowly. Read it again. Then I looked out at the land. My land. The barn, whole again. The goats grazing. The Mustang shining under the sun. I tucked the note in my pocket and smiled. Because Deborah could run, but she couldn't undo what was done. Couldn't erase the record. Couldn't stop the world from seeing what she'd become. And she sure as hell couldn't take back the land my granddad bled to build. Because now, it was protected. Not just by me, but by everyone who stood up when it mattered. And just when I thought the storm had passed, just as the dust began to settle, as I sat on the porch with my dog and a cold drink, watching the sun set over fields that had finally returned to peace. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered. A woman's voice, cold, calm. You think it's over, Jack? I froze. Who is this? Click. Silence. The call ended. And just like that, the war that cost them $680,000 might not be the end after all. The call stayed with me like a thorn in my side. That voice, chilling, too calm. You think it's over, Jack? Echoed in my head every night after that. I didn't recognize it, not exactly. But deep down, I knew who it had to be. Deborah Lancaster hadn't disappeared. She'd gone underground, and she was still watching. For weeks, Nothing else happened. The court-ordered payments started to come in. At first small amounts, then a large wire transfer from a liquidated Greenlock account. I used the money to repair everything the fire touched, rebuilt the barn roof, fixed the old porch swing, even finished the Mustang. But I didn't touch a dime for myself, because I didn't win this fight to get rich. I fought because it was right. Neighbors came by more often now, sometimes just to say thanks, sometimes to ask for help fixing a fence or hauling feed. Word had spread beyond Red River County. I even got letters from people in other states, folks who had their own HOA horror stories, people who felt like no one ever stood up. They called me a hero. But I wasn't. I was just a man who didn't move when the storm rolled in. Then, 2 months after the final court ruling, I got a letter, hand-delivered again. No stamp, no name, just 2 words on the front. Last warning. Inside was a picture, a printed still frame from one of my security cameras. Me, sitting on the porch, dog at my feet. The timestamp? Last night. Someone had been here. Close enough to take the footage. Close enough to let me know. And that's when I made the decision. It was time to shut this down. For good. I took the letter straight to the state investigator who had handled the original arson case, a tough-as-nails woman named Agent Reynolds. When she saw the photo, her face hardened. "They're escalating again," she said. "That's stalking and harassment. Whoever's doing this isn't just angry, they're trying to intimidate." I nodded. "I'm done playing defense." Reynolds tapped her pen on the table. "Then let's bait the trap." 3 nights later, I left the porch light off. Just like they wanted. I shut down every camera on my property, except one. A hidden trail cam tucked inside an old birdhouse on the corner of the porch. It had motion sensors, night vision, and a clear view of the front steps. I left the original threatening letter sitting on the porch table. A fresh cup of coffee beside it. Just like the last photo. Then I waited. Midnight passed, then 1 a.m. At 2:17 a.m., the alert buzzed my phone. Motion detected. I didn't move, just tapped the feed. And there she was. Deborah Lancaster, creeping across my yard like a ghost. She looked nothing like the polished woman who ran HOA meetings and quoted bylaws like scripture. Her hair was stringy, her eyes sunken. She wore a black hoodie and jeans, carrying something under her arm. A gas can. I stayed quiet, watched her walk up the steps. Then the porch light snapped on. "Don't move," I said, shotgun in hand, leveled low and steady. She froze. Behind her, the sheriff's cruiser headlights flared. Deputy Willis stepped out. "You're under arrest, Deborah," he said. She didn't run, just slowly set the gas can down and whispered, "You ruined everything." "No," I said. I stopped it. She was cuffed right there on my porch, muttering about land and power and people who don't understand progress. They found more than just the can. She had a flash drive on her, one final ace up her sleeve. But it backfired. The flash drive had emails, names, even surveillance footage from other properties. Proof that Red River Trails HOA had been running coordinated intimidation campaigns across multiple counties. It was the final nail in the coffin. With that, the state charged Deborah, Greenlock's board, and 2 county officials who'd quietly taken donations to look the other way. The feds joined in. The HOA was dissolved. Greenlock collapsed. Deborah, sentenced to 15 years without parole. It's been 6 months now. The land's quiet again. The animals are healthy. The barn's clean. And for the first time in years, I can sleep through the night without one ear tuned for trouble. I rebuilt my front gate stronger than before, not to keep people out, but to remind myself how far we've come. And every time I drive through it, I remember what my granddad used to say. You don't own the land owns you. And if you treat it right, it'll fight for you when the time comes. He was right. This land did fight. So did the people. And together, we won. So if you're out there, listening to this story, Maybe you're dealing with a crooked HOA, or a bully neighbor, or someone trying to take what's yours. Don't give in. Stand your ground. And when the world pushes, push back harder. Thanks for listening, y'all. If you like this story, don't forget to like the video, drop a comment to let us know what you would have done in my boots, and subscribe to the channel for more wild, true stories like this one. And remember, sometimes the quietest land holds the loudest battles. Stay safe out there. Jack out.